For 200 years, humanity played by the rules. When they joined the Galactic Concord, a council dominated by ancient empires, they accepted their status as junior members. They accepted second-rate trade routes, limited territory, and the scoffs of species who had crossed the stars long before humans built fire. But humans were patient. They learned, they watched, and when they finally rose, it was not with fanfare but with silence. A silence the galaxy mistook for submission. That was their first mistake. It began with the colony of Tarsus IV. Nestled on the edge of Terran-controlled space, Tarsus IV was a beacon of progress, a planet terraformed from lifeless rock into a garden world. It showcased the very best of human resilience. Children were born under two suns. Cities hummed with clean fusion power. The forests had singing wind trees bred by Earth biogeneticists. Then came the Varnak. A warlike species from the outer spur, the Varnak believed humans had expanded too far. They didn't ask. They invaded. They erased Tarsus IV in 96 minutes. No warning, no declaration of war, just orbital bombardment followed by fire. 10 million humans died, not soldiers, families. The Concord held a vote. They condemned the Varnak formally, politely, then moved on. That was the second mistake. The United Earth Directorate did not respond with speeches. They responded with silence. Then their ships vanished from known trade lanes. Human diplomats returned home. Embassies shuddered. For a brief moment, it seemed humanity had retreated. But deep in the asteroid belts of the Erebos system, something was being forged. Not a weapon, a warning. They called it the Caliban Protocol. And when it was unleashed, the stars would burn. The first sign was the disappearance of the Varnak forward base on Calestra 7. No distress call, no debris field. Just static. Varnak Command sent a scout squadron. They too vanished. Within a week, 6 more bases along the Terran border went dark. Finally, the Varnak High Warlord demanded an emergency Concord hearing. He pounded his fists on the crystal table of the Grand Hall, demanding sanctions, revenge, something. But Earth was absent. Their seat remained empty. Only a silver pin, shaped like a tear, rested on the chair. The Concord was split. Some saw Earth's withdrawal as cowardice. Others began to fear something far worse: preparation. Out in the void, Earth had grown silent, but the silence had a rhythm, like a heartbeat. Slow, calculated. Then came the message. Every relay across the Concord span lit up simultaneously. Not a transmission, a recording. It was a voice, calm, clear, unmistakably human. You took our children. You silenced our laughter. Now we will teach you what it means to mourn. Then nothing. The Caliban Protocol had begun. By the time Concord and analysts finished decrypting the message's signal origin, it was too late. 3 Varnak capital ships were already smoldering wrecks. No survivors. No traces of the enemy. Just scorched metal and precisely carved warnings in every language the Concord recognized. You mistook our silence for weakness. They came not in grand armadas, but in silence. Swift, black-hulled ships with no insignia, no lights, and no transmissions. The Ember Fleet, born of vengeance and precision, moved like shadows across star maps. Each vessel was a ghost, running on dark matter folds and silent engine pulses. Concord navies couldn't track them. Varnak early warning systems failed before they knew they'd been pinged. Entire starbases turned into hollow husks in minutes. No survivors, no prisoners. Only the mark, an ember carved into metal. The Varnaks screamed for retaliation. They rallied fleets, bulked up fortresses, and scrambled warbands. But the Ember Fleet never attacked where it was expected. They struck fuel depots, logistics relays, communication satellites. They unmade the infrastructure of war. And still, not a word from Earth. Concord media called it an overreaction. Senators demanded humanity stand down. But the United Earth Directorate issued no denials, no confirmations. Just the same silence. Behind that silence, the Ember Fleet expanded. From 10 ships to 30, then 100. Each one piloted by volunteers, soldiers who had lost family on Tarsus IV. Engineers who built faster engines just to get revenge quicker. Strategists who had studied every war in galactic history and rewrote all the rules. In the dark, humanity wasn't fighting a war. They were crafting a lesson. Bhaskar Ridge wasn't just a military installation. It was a statement. A scar of metal and plasma that declared Varnak dominance over the surrounding quadrants. Its rings of defense extended kilometers out, with auto-targeting AI nests and grab mines that had flayed ships to shrapnel for decades. It was untouchable, unbreakable, until it wasn't. Admiral Lyra Eames stood on the command deck of the Ember Fleet dreadnought Winterlight. Her eyes, ever calm, locked onto the flickering holomap. Each pulsing dot around Bhaskar was a ghost signature planted by Ember Scouts. They weren't just approaching Bhaskar, they were rewriting the very idea of approach. "Begin erosion," she ordered. The first wave wasn't a fleet. It was a storm of coded viruses, electromagnetic flares, and false beacons. The Varnak defense grid lit up in chaos, friend turning on friend, shields realigning in error. Every automated gun became a potential liability. Then, when the outer perimeter destabilized, came precision. Ember Fleet ships fell like silence, fast, sharp, and without warning. Strike teams breached the surface, targeting not weapons, but infrastructure. Power relays, command uplinks, shield cores. Eames didn't want to win with brute force. She wanted to prove that no fortress was eternal. Within 36 minutes, Bhaskar Ridge's defense was splintered. Varnak High Commander Droketh tried to rally. He broadcast a rallying cry to the surrounding sectors. It went unanswered. Why? Because the Ember Fleet had already jammed the relays, not to stop the message, but to delay it. Just long enough for Droketh to hear their reply first. A live feed of Tarsus IV's destruction. Overlaid with the voice of a child, one of the last recordings pulled from Tarsus's refugee beacon. "I don't want to go to sleep. The sky is too loud." Moments later, Bhaskar Ridge fell. It was not just a victory. It was a signal. The conquered watched the footage in horror. A fortress considered the pinnacle of Varnak engineering had been dissected with surgical fury. Not for conquest, not for glory, but for memory. Ambassador Kenzo Val, still moving among neutral systems, received more than 50 alliance offers in under an hour. The galaxy wasn't aligning with Earth out of fear. They were aligning out of recognition. The Ember Fleet didn't represent revenge. They represented justice, finally given form. The Conquered was never built for unity. It was a web of uneasy alliances and whispered bargains. For centuries it held through diplomacy and inertia. But the Caliban Protocol shattered that illusion. When word of Bhaskar Ridge's fall reached the central sectors, panic surged. Species who once mocked humans now fortified their borders. Trade convoys rerouted, ambassadors resigned, and in the Grand Hall of Concordia Prime, the High Chancellor called an emergency summit. Only 2/3 of the members attended. The Varnak demanded war. The Letharians proposed a joint task force to hunt down Ember Fleet Command. The Durrell, silent and serpentine, merely observed, their gold-ringed eyes unblinking. And the humans? Still absent, but not silent. The Concord networks were hacked, flawlessly. Every screen, every data stream, every personal assistant across the core sectors, lit with the same image. A single, burning ember. Then the feed changed. It showed the ruins of Tarsus IV, the playgrounds reduced to ash, the hospitals vaporized, the screaming skies. A voice followed, deeper than before. Human, ancient, controlled. "We offered peace. You offered apathy. Now we offer clarity." The feed cut, and with it, the Conquered fractured. The Hithari seceded. The Vormach Confederacy closed its borders. The Durrell disappeared into the void, and the Ember Fleet continued to expand. Not all were afraid, some were inspired. Rebel factions from forgotten systems began transmitting messages of allegiance. Fringe colonies declared loyalty to Earth. Smugglers and traders started running supplies to Ember-controlled space, where it was no longer just vengeance. It was a movement. In the shadow of the Concorde's disintegration, a new power began to take shape. Not an empire, not a government, a covenant. On the former mining world of Delios Prime, once a neutral trade station now abandoned by conquered fleets, emissaries of the fractured galaxy gathered in secret. Not in fear, but in anticipation. Leaders of fringe worlds, resistance commanders, pirate lords, scientists, and even defectors from Varnak colonies stood under the battered dome of the old Unity Forum. And waiting for them at the center, calm, deliberate, was Ambassador Kenzo Val of Earth. He wore no armor, carried no weapon, but his presence filled the room like thunderclouds before a storm. When, "You are not here because Earth demands it," he began. "You are here because you remember what the Concorde chose to forget." Whispers filled the chamber, then silence. "You remember Tarsus 4, not as a statistic, but as a wound, a lesson, an opportunity." A woman in gray armor, Matriarch Elin of the Kari's Void, stepped forward. "You want us to fight with you," she said. "You want us to burn the Varnak to ash." Val nodded. "Only if you remember what it felt like to be powerless, to be unheard." He reached into his cloak and dropped a charred child's toy onto the floor. A simple wooden carving, scorched but intact. This was found in the ruins of Tarsus. No one knows the child's name, not even we. But the Varnak erased her like she never existed. He looked around. "Tell me, how many names will we lose before we say, enough?" The silence that followed was not absence. It was agreement. Within the hour, the Infernal Accord was born. 12 signatories, dozens more pledging support, not bound by law but by shared pain and mutual fury. They didn't call it an alliance. They called it a reckoning. Ember Fleet Command shifted its base to a nomadic supercarrier, the Acheron. No fixed location, no home port, only fire. On board, Admiral Lyra Eames coordinated the most precise disruption campaign in recorded galactic history. Varnak manufacturing planets blinked out one by one, not destroyed, disassembled, their resources rerouted to build new vessels faster than the Varnak could count. A new class of warship was born from this chaos, the Vigilant, half the size of a Concorde dreadnought, twice the speed. It didn't need to carry armies, only reminders. Every Vigilant bore the same inscription beneath its hull: "Never again the silence." But the Varnak did not retreat. Their new warlord, Turak Kor, was young, brutal, and unflinching. He declared total war on humanity and its collaborators. The Varnak mobilized colonies long held dormant, pulled reserves from ancestral fleets, dredged up weapons from before Concord was born. 1,000 ships gathered over the blood-red world of Suvarak. They prepared to erase Earth from the star charts. But when they arrived, they found not Earth. They found Delios Prime. And waiting above it, the Ember Fleet. The battle was not one with numbers. It was one with message. Every strike from the Ember ships was surgical. Infrastructure crumbled, shields collapsed. Varnak formations broke against phantom tactics they had never trained against. The Varnak command flagship, Vakor's Pride, broadcast a message mid-battle, desperate to demand surrender. Admiral Eames answered with a feed of Tarsus IV last transmission. Screams, fire, silence. Then she cut them off. In the aftermath, the galaxy watched not from a distance, but with breathless anticipation. And Earth, for the first time in centuries, issued a galactic address. Not from a throne, not from a council, from a child. A young girl, hair braided with solar thread, stood before a camera aboard the Acheron. "My name is Layla. My family lived on Tarsus 4. I was off-world for school. I survived. They didn't." She looked up, eyes bright and unafraid. "You can call us monsters, but you made us this way. Now we make the rules." Across the stars, silence reigned. But this time it was not misunderstanding. It was awe. The aftermath of Delios Prime left scars not only in the stars, but in the psyche of every sentient being who witnessed it. The Varnak fleets retreated to their core territories, licking their wounds, uncertain of what had just broken their centuries-old war machine. Concord channels flooded with fear. The silence from Earth, from Ember Fleet, was no longer seen as arrogance. It was discipline, and nothing frightened the Concorde more. Admiral Eames stood before a hollow map of the Varnak interior worlds. She didn't blink. Her officers watched in reverent silence as red dots representing future Ember strikes began to populate the display. Operation Requiem begins in 6 hours, she said. We are not liberators. We are not invaders. We are the reckoning made manifest. No cheers followed, just nods, determination, a hunger that ran deeper than vengeance. Elsewhere, Earth's skies remained quiet. No fleet launches, no public speeches. But deep within the Andes range, beneath layers of old rock and newer satellites, the High Sentinel Council convened. 9 human leaders, hidden from all cameras. They spoke not of conquest, but of balance. We cannot become the Varnak, said one. We must end the war, not inherit it. Another shook their head. They started this. We end it on our terms. That's not conquest. That's justice. In the end, they agreed on one thing. Let the galaxy watch. Let them remember. On Varnak Prime, propaganda blared from every pillar. The Ember Fleet were painted as butchers, mindless destroyers. The Tarsus footage was erased, forbidden. But the truth doesn't vanish. It whispers. And in back alley forums, among the younger Varnak who questioned the legacy of their elders, those whispers turned into doubt, and doubt into hope. A small band of Varnak defectors, scholars, soldiers, thinkers, sent a message across the void. They didn't plead for mercy. They offered allegiance, to memory, to truth, to Earth. Kenzo Val stood again beneath the Unity Forum's broken dome. He watched as that message played. He smiled, not with triumph, but with relief. The galaxy may yet survive us, he said softly, if it chooses to listen. And above him, the stars, once cold, burned just a little brighter. Operation Requiem began under the veil of silence that had become humanity's signature. Ember ships descended not with force, but precision, striking systems not only with weapons, but with truths long buried. On Varnak worlds, holograms bloomed in the sky, scenes from Tarsus 4, testimony from survivors, intercepted Varnak military logs that detailed their joy at the massacre. These were not weapons of war. They were weapons of remembrance. The Varnak people began to fracture. Cities refused to provide soldiers. Planetary governors were overthrown. The myth of a glorious war was unraveling in real time. But the warlord Tarak Kor did not yield. Instead, he doubled down. He initiated Scorched Womb, a desperate operation meant to bait the Ember Fleet into a trap. He chose the human-aligned colony of Kalos, a haven world known for its archives and sanctuaries, and bombed it without warning. 3 million dead. And that was the final mistake. When news of Kalos reached Admiral Eames, she issued a single command. Wano, code Eclipse. It was not a strike order. It was a liberation order. Ember ships were no longer hunters. They became guardians. In dozens of systems, Ember forces landed not to destroy, but to protect. Civil uprisings rose alongside them. Varnak citizens carried human banners through the streets, demanding peace, demanding truth. But peace would not come easily. Because Tarak Kor had activated a forgotten relic from the pre-Conquered Age, a weapon of planetary scale known only as the Maw. Its destination, Earth. Back on Earth, the High Sentinel Council convened an emergency session. There were no more debates, no more divisions. Humanity had played the long game, restrained its fury, channeled it into justice. Now it would defend. Fleet General Akira Malik stood before the orbital dry dock where Earth's final defense project had been hidden in plain sight for decades. The Helios Ascendant, part Ark, part warship, part AI archive, Earth's last word, and it was ready. As the Maw approached, bending space like a scream, the Ember Fleet regrouped. All that remained of the Infernal Accord gathered in its path, not as sacrifice, but as defiance. Because provoking humans had always been a mistake, and now the galaxy would pay the price. The Maw came not as a fleet, but as a singularity, a colossal weapon built to end civilizations, not defeat armies. It bent starlight around its frame, swallowed signals, silenced systems. Entire star charts were erased in its path. It crossed the Sol Gate in 17 minutes. On Earth, the Helios Ascendant rose from its dry dock like a titan stirred from ancient slumber. Its hull, layered with quantum-forged armor, shimmered with coded glyphs of every human language. Not just a warship, a message. Ember fleet formations aligned alongside it. Allied vessels from the Infernal Accord fell into place. Even rogue Varnak defectors took formation, pledging blood and honor. In the command bay, Admiral Eames and General Malik stood shoulder to shoulder. Old wounds, new resolve. "Let them come," Malik said. The Maw breached Sol orbit. A pulse of pure void struck the outer defense ring. Dozens of stations vanished. Time fractured in its wake. But the Helios Ascendant endured. Its shielding wasn't just technological. It was adaptive, woven from trillions of human neural signatures, pain-coded and memory-bound. Every hit made it smarter. And then Earth struck back. The counterstrike began with pulse cascades from hidden Saturnian outposts. Graviton destabilizers followed. The Maw recoiled, momentarily disoriented. Then the Helios Ascendant launched its payload. Not missiles, but antimatter-bound memory clusters. They didn't just hit, they unfolded. Tarsus 4, Kalos, the cries of children, the names of the fallen. Broadcast through every layer of the Maw's internal systems, infecting its logic cores, flooding its decision trees with guilt. For the first time in its existence, the Maw hesitated. Then came the second wave. Ember Fleet. Dive squadrons punctured its shielding. Internal sabotage teams. Humans, Varnak, and more. Implanted entropy cores. As the Maw collapsed from within, Earth's final message echoed across the stars. Pain taught us patience. Silence taught us strength. Grief gave us fire. The Maw fractured. Not exploded. Fractured. It screamed as it fell, and the galaxy listened.